Welcome back, everyone. This is Just Two Assholes Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Matt Bowen.
And I'm Daniel Powell.
And this is episode number 12. We're keeping it going. So we had a good week last week. We're going to start with another top 5 for each position going into this week. So top 5 matchups.
So we'll start at the quarterback position as we did last week. My number 1 this week is going to be Kirk Cousins versus the New Orleans Saints. Right now, Kirk Cousins is having a really good fantasy season. His receiving threats there in Minneapolis are just really Minnesota, not Minneapolis. Sorry, I got basketball in the brain. Against Minnesota are really, really good. Adam Thielen has been a monster this year, and they're playing the Saints, who are 31st in the league right now on ESPN, or in our league specifically, against the pass. So he comes in at number 1 for me.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I didn't have him on my list just because this week is so good for matchups for quarterbacks, I believe. My number 1 is Patrick Mahomes. I know he's playing Denver's defense, which they are ranked 5th against quarterbacks, but the last two out of 3 haven't been a really good quarterback. So the Jets, they let up 17 points. The Rams, they let up 7 points. So they contained Jared Goff, but they didn't really have to because Todd Gurley ran 200 yards.
Yeah, Todd Gurley popped off.
So Goff didn't have to do too much in that game. And then against Rosen last week, they only allowed 2 points, but they scored 33 points for a defense against them. So I'm going with Patrick Mahomes just because that offense is so loaded. And this is a divisional game, so it means a lot. So the Chiefs, it's not a must-win game, but if they want to stay atop in the AFC, they got to win this one.
Yeah, especially a divisional matchup like this. I like Mahomes a lot this week. He'll come in later on my list. He's in my top 5 just against that Denver defense. With Von Miller is feasting right now. Bradley Chubb has come up a lot. Their corners are still really good. I like Mahomes this week, just not as much as you do, I think.
Yeah, this one's pretty risky. I mean, especially if we get that Denver defense that showed up last week, Mahomes is going to be in trouble.
Yeah, well, and so Denver has been really bad against the run all year. And so if Kareem Hunt gets going, then they could just rely on him a lot in the running game and the passing game, I think, and he could have a huge game. That's why he'll be on my running back list as well. But sticking with quarterbacks, my number 2 this week is going to be a little surprising. I have Andy Dalton as my number 2 quarterback this week. Against Tampa Bay, they're the 32nd ranked defense in the league. This game is going to be a shootout. I like Jameis Winston a lot this week as well for the same reason. But Dalton just has so many receiving threats on that team. AJ Green is going to feast. Tyler Boyd has looked like maybe the best wide receiver from his draft class in the NFL right now. He's really, really good. He's probably the best number 2 wide receiver in the league, I think. And then you've got Joe Mixon, who can catch passes, and CJ Uzomah hasn't been a slouch in the receiving game either. So I really like Dalton this week.
Yeah, so do I. I got him as my number 4 slot. So yeah, I like Dalton too, really good this week. And like you said, I mean, they're playing Tampa Bay, which has just been horrible. It seemed like since they fired their defensive coach, it didn't help at all. So their defense is still horrible, and yeah, they got tons of weapons on that. And Cincinnati's defense isn't that good either, so they're going to have to score points to win the game. So yeah, I like Dalton too. He's my number 4. My number 2, so usually he doesn't put up big numbers, but they're playing Buffalo this week. So I got Tom Brady coming in. Buffalo is, hold on, let me pick it up. Buffalo is 6 against the quarterbacks, but they kind of been up and down. 24 points against Baltimore, 22 against the Chargers, 9 versus Minnesota when they shut Kirk Cousins down, 14 versus Green Bay, and then 4 or 5, and then 22 against Indianapolis. So I think that they're going to give up a lot, really, against Tom Brady, because if Sony Michel's healthy, which it's still to be seen, he's still questionable this week, but even if not, James White exploded last week when Sony Michel did not play, so I don't think they're going to have any trouble running the ball or throwing the ball to the James White in the flats, so I think he's going to have a good game this week.
Yeah, I like the Patriots a lot this week. I don't know if I like Tom Brady just because I think the Patriots are going to be up by a lot and rely a lot on the running game just to kind of stay ahead and kill clock in the second half. I think you could get 3 touchdowns out of Tom Brady in the first half, though, and then he basically has to do nothing after that. But those 3 touchdowns could be 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, and that is good for 18 to 20 fantasy points right there, which is a pretty solid overall stat line. So I like Tom Brady a lot this week. I just think there's higher upside with other guys. That's why Tom Brady is not on my list this week.
For number 3, so I have Andrew Luck coming in. So they're playing Oakland. Oakland really hasn't done anything this year. We know their defense is bad, 21st, and T.Y. Hilton's back. So Andrew Luck had a pretty good game last week. Let's see what he had. He had 22 points. So he has 4 weeks straight of over 22 points or more. And I just see it coming more. They played Buffalo last week, which I liked the matchup against them this week in Oakland. Like I said, nothing's gone right for them. They just gave away Amari Cooper. So I don't see this as a shootout, but I think Andrew Luck will have a pretty good game.
I think Andrew Luck has a really good game here, too. He's not on my list, though. This is a matchup I looked at, but a lot like the Tom Brady one, I just expect the Colts to be up by a lot and not have to rely on him. That's why Marlon Mack does make my running back list. My number 3 is actually Jared Goff, and this is probably ill-advised, but I just see a game script where Jared Goff has to keep up with Aaron Rodgers, and I know Todd Gurley has been everything on that offense, and he's going to get his still, but Jared Goff, I think, is going to have to throw the ball in this matchup to keep up pace with Aaron Rodgers. And if that's the case, when Jared Goff has been asked to throw the ball a lot, especially in the red zone and in the end zone, he's done really, really well. So this could be another week where we see Jared Goff sort of explode because he has to keep up with the opposing quarterback.
Yeah, I like Goff too. He came in as my number 5. So I like this matchup too against Green Bay. Green Bay really hasn't shut down any quarterback this year so far. And LA Rams, I think they're the best team in the league right now.
Yeah, absolutely. They look unbeatable.
The most solid team, offense and defense.
Yeah, Kansas City versus the Rams is my Super Bowl matchup right now, I think, and that would just be an incredible game.
That'd be awesome.
I can't wait.
So many points in that game, too. Yeah, Jared Goff, like you said, he has so many weapons. And even with Todd Gurley, he catches touchdowns, too. He just doesn't run them. So that helps him out, too. He's a great red zone threat. Cooper Kupp is still out. He's questionable, but I don't think he's going to play. He had that really bad knee injury. But, yeah, I think Jared Goff is going to explode, probably close to 30 points this week.
All right, yeah, and so number 4 for me is Patrick Mahomes because he's still Patrick Mahomes. The Denver defense is really good, especially against opposing quarterbacks, but Patrick Mahomes is just electric. He is the most fun player, other than maybe Todd Gurley, in the league to watch on a weekly basis. I just think this is a game where Kareem Hunt explodes and is asked to do a lot, but I think Mahomes will still get his. I think he still sees 350 passing yards and probably 2 or 3 touchdowns, so I still like him a lot. I just think the upside is higher with some other guys.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why I had him number 1 in my list. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a great matchup for him. For my number 4, someone you already talked about, Andy Dalton. So we already talked about him a little bit. Just going against Tampa Bay, that defense sucks, and they have so much offense for Cincinnati, but they don't have a good defense. So it's going to be a high-scoring game. So I like the matchup for Andy Dalton. And then for my number 5, I have Jared Goff. So we already talked about him. Who do you have for number 5?
My number 5 is actually Russell Wilson, who hasn't been talked about a whole lot recently, fantasy-wise, because he hasn't been that good recently, fantasy-wise. But this is another one where he's going to have to try and keep up with Matt Stafford. And they don't have much of a running game. The Detroit defense doesn't scare me. I think Russell Wilson could rush for 70 yards in this matchup, maybe have a rushing touchdown, a couple of passing touchdowns. This is a game I think we're going to see something like probably 28-31 for whoever the winning team is. So there's a lot of offense to be had there, and I really like Russell Wilson and his running ability, and that's why he makes my list.
Yeah, that's a good matchup. It's crazy how people have kind of gotten off the Russell Wilson train. In my league, I have another league, he actually got dropped. And, I mean, he was top 5 drafted this year. So, yeah, I think where he comes into play is his running aspect because they don't have a running back, so he's the best running back on their team.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and he's going to have to do it by himself, and their defense isn't the best this year. So I think Detroit is going to put up a lot of points. So, like you said, they're going to have to be chasing the Lions' offense, especially with Kerryon Johnson in there. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's a good matchup. For my sleeper, I actually have Rosen.
Oh, wow. All right.
And since because they're playing the 49ers, that was the main thing for me. But he's got to turn it on somehow. And like you said earlier, or like we were talking about before the show, they're going to have to feed the ball to David Johnson. They got a new offensive coordinator, and I just hope this is definitely a sleeper. This might blow up. And, I mean, the last 2 games he had 7 points and 2 points, but they got demolished by Denver's defense. San Francisco is not the Denver defense. And Minnesota, 7 points. So I think the 49ers are a worse defense than Minnesota. I'm just praying right now Last time they did play the 49ers, he had 10 points. So hopefully you learn that defense a little bit, but it's very possible that Kyle Shanahan learned Josh Rosen when they played. So this is definitely a really deep sleeper for me, but I like Josh Rosen.
Yeah, it's definitely a deep sleeper. I sort of like it because the Niners' defense is really bad, especially against the pass. Our corners just aren't that good. Richard Sherman should be back this week, so that does hurt Rosen quite a bit. But Larry Fitzgerald plays out of the slot, so he's not going to see any of Richard Sherman, so that definitely helps your pick. Plus, Mike McCoy being fired and Byron Leftwich taking over as offensive coordinator. Byron Leftwich was a quarterback, so I'm expecting a very pass-heavy attack, and I'm expecting David Johnson to be involved in that passing game a lot. So I don't hate this matchup for
Josh Rosen.
Josh Rosen. Sorry, I was going to say Jared Goff. I don't hate this matchup at all. My sleeper pick, though, is Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
Because I think this game is going to be a shootout. Cincinnati's defense is 27th in our league against opposing quarterbacks. And he's got Mike Evans to throw to. He's got Cameron Brate, O.J. Howard, Deshaun Jackson. Just so many receiving threats. He's definitely going to throw a couple of interceptions. But as a sleeper pick, I feel like he can do enough otherwise to put up a solid 18 to 20 fantasy points this week.
Yeah, that's definitely a better sleeper pick than mine. It has a better chance, but yeah, especially it helps that Tampa Bay doesn't have a solid running back. They're trying to figure out, is it Barber, is it Jones? And yeah, he has tons of weapons on that offense, so yeah, I think he can get close to 20 points this week.
All right, moving on to running backs. My number one this week is easy. It's a layup every single week, I think. It's Todd Gurley. Green Bay is the 14th ranked defense against opposing running backs, but they haven't seen anyone like Todd Gurley, and they haven't played an offense that game plans around their running back like the Rams. So this is an easy pick at number one. He's probably number one for you as well.
Yep. He's number one. He's going to be number one every week, pretty much. Just no one has proven to stop him at all.
Yeah, no, you can't.
No, he's the number one rusher in our league. And let's see. Yeah, oh my God. So he had 23 points, 30 points, 39, and 28. So, yeah, he's going to dominate. He's averaging 28 points a game.
Yeah, and in a perfect world, Todd Gurley would be the front runner for MVP right now. I think Patrick Mahomes probably is the literal front runner because he is a quarterback on one of the best teams in the league that's going to make the playoffs and blah, blah, blah. But no player is more important to their team this year than Todd Gurley. He is the most valuable player in the NFL by the definition of those words.
Yeah, and it sucks because most of the time it is a quarterback that wins it. So especially on a winning team who goes deep in the playoffs. But yeah, I agree with you. They use him so much. They run with him. He's a great pass blocker. He's a great pass catcher. And he's great after the catch, too, after the run. Like, he breaks tackles. He does it all for a running back. And, yep, that's why he's my number one and going to be probably the rest of the season.
Yeah, every single week, I think.
Yeah, so he's my number one as well. For my number two, Saquon Barkley. So I know you don't have him in your list, but they're playing Washington, it's a divisional game, and I know Zeke didn't do too much in that game last week, but the Giants don't have anyone, really. They got Odell Beckham Jr., but no one else. And Washington's offense has actually turned it up a little bit these past weeks. So the Giants actually put up a pretty good showing. I know there was some late garbage time points, but they had a pretty good showing against Atlanta's horrible defense. So Washington does have a better defense. They do have some good defensive tackles, but I just see Saquon Barkley. They're going to have to feed through him. You can't let Eli Manning. He's not going to win you games. So you have to give the ball to the playmakers, Odell and Barkley. I think he'll have close to 20 points this week.
I looked at Barkley hard in this matchup and stayed away from him just because the Redskins' defensive line has been so good ever since they got their first-round pick from Alabama, Jonathan something. I can't remember.
I think it's Allen.
Yeah, Jonathan Allen. That's right. Ever since Jonathan Allen came back from injury, that D-line has just been insane, and running backs have scored, since he came back, 9.5 and 4 fantasy points, and that's Carolina and Dallas, who have two of the best running back cores in the league. I don't like this matchup for Barkley because of that. I don't like this matchup for the Giants at all. I think they could maybe score 6 points in this game, honestly. I don't think anyone on that offense scores a touchdown, and that's why I stayed away from Saquon Barkley in this matchup. And my number two this week is Kareem Hunt versus Denver. Denver's been horrible against opposing running backs. Last week they did pretty good, but it was a bit of an easier matchup and nothing too scary. I see a game script here where Kareem Hunt gets fed the ball a lot in the running game and in the passing game. I think Tyreek Hill definitely sees his still. Sammy Watkins might see a couple catches here and there. But this to me just screams a Kareem Hunt type of game. The past 3 weeks, he has been a monster. He was a big letdown the first couple weeks of the season and didn't really hold up to his first-round draft pick status or first-round fantasy draft pick status. But lately, he's looked like everything you want from a fantasy running back.
Yeah, and he not only does things in the running game, like you said, he's a great pass catcher as well. And with Denver playing with Patrick Mahomes and against the Chiefs in general, they're going to have to worry about all the different weapons. Kelsey, Watkins, Hill, and Hunt, and just all the rest of their players. I mean, and Mahomes, too, being mobile as well.
Yeah.
Like, that's just so many offensive players to have to worry about, to have to game plan about. Someone's going to go off. Probably 3 or 4 of them are going to go off against Denver. So, yeah, that is a great matchup. He actually did not make my list. But, yeah, I like that matchup a lot against Denver. So my number 3 is James White. I mean, he went off last week, and I know you're a little bitter about it because he was on your bench, but he has a great matchup going against Buffalo. I'm trying to find... Okay, so Buffalo. Buffalo against running backs is 20th, and James White has really turned it on, and especially if Sony Michel is not going to play, they don't have... I forget who stepped in for Sony Michel last week, but they don't have Hill, they don't have Burkhead, they really don't have anyone for that main running back slot. So if Sony Michel is out again, I think James White's going to explode. He had 25 points last week. So, yeah, he should. I mean, it definitely helped, but they're playing against Buffalo, who is not a good defense at all. They're not a very good team. They have a solid quarterback with Josh Allen, but he's not going to play. So, like you said, they could get up big and have to run the ball the second half. So, I think he's having a big game.
Yeah, sorry, James White also comes in at number 3 for me because Sony Michel is doubtful, and if he sits out this game, it's going to be a James White heavy game. Kenjon Barner is the running back that came in for Michel and had a pretty decent game, and I do like him in this matchup as well because, again, I think that the Patriots are going to be up by a lot, and I think they're going to be up by a big part because of James White. He just sees so many red zone targets and so many catches out of the flat. And he should see a couple rushing attempts in this game as well because they can't rely on Kenjon Barner for the entire game, I think. It's going to be classic Bill Belichick where you see more of a 50-50 split in carries with running backs. And so I see James White catching probably 8 or 9 balls as well as rushing 8 or 9 times and probably has a touchdown or 2 in this matchup and maybe 150 total yards of offense. I really like him this week, and he will not be on my bench, that's for sure.
So for my number 4, I have Joe Mixon.
Same here.
Okay, good. So we're on the same page for that. They're playing Tampa Bay. We've already talked about how bad Tampa Bay's defense is and really how explosive and top 10 for offensive-wise as weapons. Andy Dalton's stepping up this year. They have A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd, and C.J. Uzomah, which has stepped in for Tyler Eifert, really, and he's actually doing a lot better than he was. So I like this offense, this offense as a whole against Tampa Bay. I think Joe Mixon is going to have a pretty good game. He didn't do pretty good last week, though. He only got 6.5 points. But they were playing Kansas City, which their defense just came out of nowhere last week. They were a bottom 10 team for defense, the Kansas City Chiefs, but somehow they showed up. They had 2 defensive touchdowns last week. But I see Joe Mixon have a big game against Tampa Bay.
Yes, this is a great matchup for him, and all the same reasons you put him at number 4, so did I, so I'll just move on from there. My number 5 this week is David Johnson against the Niners, and that's mainly because the Niners are really bad at run defense, they're really bad at pass defense as well, they're just a bad defense. And Mike McCoy from the Cardinals, their offensive coordinator, or ex-offensive coordinator now, got fired because he didn't give David Johnson the ball enough. And so they promoted Byron Leftwich, who was a holdover from the previous regime with Bruce Arians, and Bruce Arians knew how to use David Johnson. So I think Byron Leftwich is going to be calling a lot of plays where David Johnson is going to be either targeted in the receiving game or handed the ball, tossed the ball. He's going to touch the ball, I think, probably 25, 30 times this game. And I think it's just going to be a big week for him.
Yeah, David Johnson, like you said, they have to feed the ball through their best offensive player. And going against the 49ers, they really haven't really stopped any running back so far this year. So I like that pick. For my number 5, I have James Conner. So the last time that they played Cleveland, he had 200 all-purpose yards and 2 touchdowns. I look for him to see that again. I mean, so Cleveland They are 22nd against the run. They did stop Tampa Bay last week and had only let up 13 points, but we've already said how Tampa Bay does not have a really good running back. But against the Chargers with Melvin Gordon, they let up 40. Against Pittsburgh, they let up 30. Against, the Jets, and that's when Bilal Powell and who's the other
Isaiah
guy there?
Crowell.
Crowell, they both had 100 yards that game. They let up 24 points. Oakland, with Marshawn Lynch, they let up 22 points. So against good teams with good running backs, or at least decent running backs, they let up a lot of points. And I like this from James Conner a lot. He's really filled in for Le'Veon Bell. He might not be the total package like him, but Le'Veon Bell's not coming back anytime soon, it seems like. Week 7's gone by. It's week 8 now, and he's still not showing up. So I like this matchup a lot against Cleveland.
So do I, and looking back on it, I kind of wish I put James Conner in my top 5. He just didn't make it. I'm hoping this is a game where Ben Roethlisberger comes out with sort of a revenge game, like you said earlier, and just throws the ball 45 times and tries to bury Cleveland. And it could be a lot of Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster if that does happen. But James Conner would definitely make my list at probably number 6 here if we went to 6. I can't really call him a sleeper, though, so my sleeper pick is going to be Marlon Mack against Oakland. 23rd ranked rush defense in our league, and probably in most leagues. They're just a bad defense overall. I said in our matchup, talking about matchups last week, how Marlon Mack was my favorite player on the Lucky Neckbeards team, and then he popped off for 30 points. I really like Marlon Mack. He's a very, very solid running back. He's really explosive. He's decent in the passing game, and he runs the ball really, really hard. He learned a lot from Frank Gore and Frank Gore's short stint there. He runs very patiently, just like Gore does, and explodes through the hole the exact same way. I don't think he'll have the same career as a Frank Gore, but I think for the next couple years he could be in that same type of vein of player, and I think they found a really nice running back. So Marlon Mack is my sleeper.
Yeah, I like that pick. Kind of like Kerryon Johnson, he's kind of solidified himself as the number 1 running back on that team. Sorry, Naheem Hines, he's really past you. So I like that pick a lot. For my sleeper, it's really an injury sleeper. So Dalvin Cook has been ruled out again until week 11 now. So I picked Latavius Murray. Some people might not call this a sleeper because he's actually been pretty good the last couple of weeks. Let's see what he's had. So since he's been the full-time starter, he had 21.5 points against Arizona, 20 against the Jets, and New Orleans. New Orleans is... They're actually 3rd against the run, but that's because they held Baltimore to 9 points and Tampa Bay to 6.5. So those numbers are kind of skewed. The other games, 12.5 versus Cleveland. They didn't really have a big solid running back. They had Carlos Hyde, and then 16.5 against Atlanta. They had 2 pretty good, decent running backs, and then 18.5 against the Giants. So I see a good game for him, and he's really filled in with Dalvin Cook being out. The defenses have to worry about their passing game so much that they can't stack the box and try and prevent the run, and their teams get up big. So at the end of the game, they're handing the ball off to him, and he's been doing pretty decent with it.
Yeah, I like Latavius Murray a lot in this matchup as well. I just didn't classify him as a sleeper when I was going through players just because with Dalvin Cook being injured and that being sort of common news, we know Latavius Murray is starting, and we know he's pretty solid. I think we definitely see a good game out of him here. I just don't know if he would make my top 5 or very close to it, honestly. I think we see a pretty classic Latavius Murray game in this one. The Saints haven't been awful against opposing running backs. They haven't given up tons of points, and they've been game planning for Latavius Murray in this matchup. So true. I like the Saints to keep him somewhat at bay. I think he probably still sees a touchdown and probably like 70 yards of rushing. So I think you're looking at probably 14, 15 fantasy points out of him, which means you're definitely starting him if he's on your team. So he's definitely a very solid pick, and I like that pick as a sleeper pick, honestly.
So we're going to move on to wide receivers. So I think we have most of our top 5 is going to be similar. So my number 1, I have Adam Thielen. He's been the number 1 wide receiver in the league. He has 6 or 7 consecutive. 7 consecutive 100-yard games, and out of that, he has 5 touchdowns out of those 7 games. He has just been so electric, and like we say, week in, week out, they definitely paid the wrong guy. Stephon Diggs is a good quarterback. Some people might even say he's a great quarterback. At least last year he played like it. But Adam Thielen has just turned it on. Maybe he had some motivation by the Vikings paying Diggs, and he's like, okay, I got to do even better. That way I can make more money than him or at least get paid similar to Diggs. But yeah, he's just been insane, and I expect at least 20 points against New Orleans. It's going to be a real interesting because Marshawn Lattimore has not shown up this year really at all. And if he covers him, that's going to be a good matchup, though.
Yeah, I love Adam Thielen this week. He's my number one overall wide receiver as well. I think in this matchup, he could get unlucky and not score a touchdown and still get you something like 15, 16 fantasy points. Like, that sort of value is insane. Just looking at it right now, if he was any other position, let's say he was a quarterback, he has 143.5 fantasy points in our league so far. He'd be the 6th ranked quarterback right now. Quarterbacks put up tons of fantasy points every single week. At running back, he'd be the 3rd ranked running back, behind only Todd Gurley and Saquon Barkley. What he's doing at the wide receiver position in terms of fantasy is absolutely insane. He is 20 points ahead of the number 2 guy, which is Tyreek Hill. It is kind of nutty. He's an absolute monster, and you're set for 20 fantasy points every single game, it seems. Definitely an easy number 1 there. My number 2 is probably the same as your number 2, A.J. Green.
Yep.
A.J. Green against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay can't cover anybody, 31st ranked in the league against opposing wide receivers. And A.J. Green is just a monster. He's been a top 5, probably a top 3 wide receiver basically his entire career. And he still is. He's getting a little up there in age, but it doesn't show at all. Andy Dalton loves just putting up 50-50 catches for him. He's a huge red zone target. He gets used in every facet of that passing attack, and he's going to have a really solid game here.
Yeah, and I mean, his receptions have kept going up and up and up since the first week. Like you said, I have him as number 2 in my list again. So he had 6 catches, 5, 5, 4, then 6, 7, 7. And his targets have been going up too. His targets are at least 12 or 13 a game. And he does get double covered too. But he still makes catches. I mean, he when he doesn't have a touchdown, he has 100 yards. I mean, what better could you ask for him? The last 4 games, 15 points, 14 points. It's 11.5 and then 14.5. So not exploding numbers, but against Tampa Bay's defense, yeah, I definitely could see him getting at least 100 points and a touchdown. He is such a good red zone threat, and that's what they use him a lot for. And with Tyler Boyd opening up, and we already talked about Joe Mixon and Andy Dalton picking up his game this year, he has had a lot better production this year.
Mm-hmm.
So far, my number 3, so this is where we differ a little bit. I have Juju Smith-Schuster. And I believe you have Antonio Brown in this one?
Antonio Brown's my number 4.
Okay, so my thinking was, so they're playing Cleveland, which is 24th against the pass. My thinking was that Ward, their cornerback for Cleveland, is going to go to Antonio Brown. So I was thinking, okay, there's no one else to really talk about on that defense as far as corner-wise, so I think Juju's going to light it up. So far he is 17th for wide receiver in the league, so top 20, and that's good for a number 2 wide receiver. And yeah, so he had 11 points, and then last week he had 16.5 points. He's averaging 15 points a game, and I have him. Oh no, I don't have him in this league. Nope. But yeah, he's at least getting 100 yards almost every game, and when he doesn't, he scores a touchdown. So Atlanta had 4 catches for 34 yards, but he had that touchdown. And then last week he had 7 catches for 111 yards. So it's kind of a coin flip. Who's going to go off, Antonio Brown or Juju? I was just feeling Juju this week.
Yeah, and you're feeling him for good reasons. I think if I included Juju on my list, I think he'd probably be number 6, just because this matchup is really, really nice. My number 3 comes in just ahead of him in average fantasy points per game on a weekly basis, and that is Mike Evans. On the opposite side of A.J. Green, who was both of our number 2, and that's because Cincinnati's defense is really bad against the pass. They're 21st in the league against opposing wide receivers, and the Buccaneers here are going to have to keep up with Andy Dalton and A.J. Green, and they're going to do that with Jameis Winston, who was my sleeper pick at quarterback, and Mike Evans. Mike Evans is a lot like A.J. Green in his game. His routes are really crisp, his hands are pretty good, and he's a huge red zone target. I really like him this week to definitely score a touchdown and get you at least 70 receiving yards.
Yeah, I like this pick too. He's actually my number 4. So just think about how bad Johnny Manziel is, or when he was in the NFL. This guy helped Johnny Manziel win the Heisman.
Yeah.
He made Johnny Manziel And yeah, ever since Jameis came back, he's been pretty decent. And yeah, we already talked about that being a high scoring game. I see him getting a lot of catches, and he's getting over 100 yards almost every game. So yeah, I'll definitely take him. He'll probably get close to 15 or 16 points this week, which, hey, he makes my top 5.
Yeah, 4 for me is going to be Antonio Brown, so the other wide receiver on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I went with Antonio Brown over Juju just because I feel like Antonio Brown's been turning it on a lot more lately.
Definitely
and
has.
in this rivalry matchup, I think Antonio Brown takes this one to heart. Like, hey, I need to come out and ball this game. I know Juju Smith-Schuster has all the talent in the world and will probably still see a lot of targets and receptions, but I think Antonio Brown turns into more classic Antonio Brown here. And I like Denzel Ward a lot. He can't cover Antonio Brown. One of the 2 best route runners in the entire league, some of the best hands, and despite how small he is, he's also a great red zone target. So this is a spot where I really, really like him, and that's why he comes in at number 4.
Yeah, I mean, they're just going to have to choose who are they going to double. So like you said, even Ward can't cover him one-on-one. So yeah, it's just who are they going to double, and if he gets that good matchup, Ben will hit him. So yeah, I like him this week too. So for my number 5, to round it out, I have Tyreek Hill against Denver. He's just been so solid, and he helped me win last week. He got 15.5 points. He had 1 touchdown, 7 catches for 68. He's averaging 17.9 points, and he's the number 2 wide receiver, and he's coming in as my number 5. So going against Denver's defense, their secondary is pretty solid.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's not like it was with Alib in there, but it's still good. It's pretty decent, and someone's got to go off, and he's got to get his. He usually gets 1 touchdown or 100 yards. So it's either he's going to catch a slant and take it to the house, or he's going to catch a long ball. And with Patrick Mahomes, he likes to throw that long ball. So yeah, he comes in at number 5 for against Denver for me.
Yeah, Tyreek Hill is my number 5 as well. The Denver defense does scare me a little bit, but Tyreek Hill is just so talented and so fast that it's hard to not include him on this list. He'd have to be playing someone like the Ravens or something like that, I think, to not make my list. And even then, he might, just depending on other matchups in the league as well. He's just that good. My sleeper pick is going to be Jordy Nelson against the Colts this week because Amari Cooper's gone. He's done. They got a first-round draft pick for Amari Cooper, so props to John Gruden for that one because Amari Cooper has been so hot and cold and just giving up on plays. But Jordy Nelson has been the opposite. He's been a workhorse and had a nice couple of games the first couple of weeks. And a lot of that target share is going to go Jordy Nelson's way and also Jared Cook, I think. But Jordy Nelson is my sleeper this week.
Yeah, so that's a good pick. I mean, who else do they have to throw to him besides Cook and Nelson? So yeah, they're gonna have to throw the ball. I mean, Marshawn Lynch went on IR, so they don't have a strong running game. So they have to get their offense going through the passing game. So yeah, I like that for a sleeper. I'm going with Josh Gordon. So last week he played 95% of the snaps. So he has that playbook down. Not all of it, because you know how big Ben Belichick and Josh McDaniels, just their offensive minds are just amazing. But the thing is Tom Brady trusts him now, and he's proven that 2 weeks in a row. When he's double covered and he has no one else to look for, he just throws it up because that guy does not drop balls. He does not at all. Tom Brady came out last week and said since he's been in New England, he hasn't seen him drop a ball at all, even in practice. That's insane.
Yeah, that Stephon Diggs commercial where he gets the mailbox stuck to his hand, that should be Josh Gordon. Because I'm not trying to say Stephon Diggs has bad hands or anything, but Josh Gordon's hands are otherworldly. It's like he has super glue on his hands at all times. The dude is just an athletic freak. I like him a lot in this matchup as well, and that is a great sleeper pick, honestly. Moving on to tight ends. This is going to be another one that I think is pretty easy this week. We'll probably have a lot of the same players. My number 1 this week, Travis Kelce.
Yep.
I don't think there's going to be many weeks where I don't have Travis Kelce at least number 1 or number 2 probably, because Zach Ertz is really good as well. But Travis Kelce against Denver. Denver's 19th in the league right now, so below average against tight ends. And Patrick Mahomes loves throwing to him. He's a huge, very athletic guy, giant red zone target. He's just almost the perfect tight end.
Yeah. I mean, I have him as well, and we talked about last week how he is taken over as the number 1 overall, at least explosive play over Gronk. Zach Ertz is right there. He is the best wide receiver on his team, but Travis Kelce, he can just do so much. And he's got a little bit of Greg Olsen in him too, where he runs over the middle, and when you depend on him, he's going to catch the ball. So he's averaging, 12.9 points a game, which is solid for a tight end. And yeah, I like him a lot. That's why he comes to my number 1 against Denver's defense. So he's number 2 in our league. And yeah, he has had one game where he had less than 8 points, and that was his first game where he had 1 catch and 6 yards. The rest of them, he's had at least 5 catches and at least 78 yards. So for a tight end, that's 12 points right there. So that's pretty solid for. So I like Travis Kelce. He's my number 1 as well. For my number 2, I have George Kittle.
Okay, wow.
Yep. So I think he's going to have a big game against Arizona. So Arizona is 6th against tight end, but their defense really isn't that good at all. They haven't faced 2 good tight ends. So Denver, I can't even name their tight end. Minnesota has Kyle Rudolph, which really hasn't shown up. And then Greg Kittle has been their almost highest scoring tight end against them with 10.5. So I think he's going to have a big game. CJ Beathard is kind of finding his place. He's not going to be your starter. You can't depend on him, but he's the quarterback. And George Kittle is probably, next to Goodwin, that best player on that offense as a whole. So I think that playing against Arizona, neither of them has a really good big offense, so there might be a shootout. I know they're going against Josh Rosen, but if my sleeper pick's right, it should be a pretty good shootout. And George Kittle is just so reliable, and he's a good red zone target, so that's why I have him as my number 2.
Yeah, and as a Niners fan, I love Marquise Goodwin. He's a very, very good player, very fast, of course, Olympic track athlete. But George Kittle is probably the best wide receiver on this Niners team, and he's proven it week in and week out. Against the Rams, who have an insanely good defense, he had 5 receptions for 98 yards and a touchdown. Against the Cardinals 2 weeks ago, who they're playing this week, 5 receptions, 83 yards, but no touchdown. He is a great red zone target, and more than that, he is a huge home run hitting target, too. He's had a couple of touchdowns this year of 60-plus yards, I think. So when he catches the ball in space, he finds giant holes to run through or just runs over cornerbacks and safeties to get to the end zone. I think this is a very, very good game for him. He comes in at number 3 for me. My number 2 this week is Zach Ertz, because Zach Ertz is the best tight end in football, in fantasy football so far this year. He does have a tough matchup against Jacksonville, but he's so good. And again, just like George Kittle, he might be the best wide receiver on that team. And Carson Wentz loves throwing it to him. He trusts the hell out of him. So Jacksonville is the second overall defense against tight ends in the league this year. But that Eagles offense just runs so much through Zach Ertz that I feel like he can't fail.
Yeah, this is going to be a hard matchup for him, but he comes in as my number 3, so I believe in him as well. Like you said, Alshon Jeffrey's coming back, so that's helping spread out defenses as well. So Zach Ertz is probably the best receiver on that team, but Alshon Jeffrey's pretty good as well.
Yes.
And he matches up really well with Carson Wentz. And since Carson Wentz actually came back, Zach Ertz, let's see, hasn't had less than 10 points a game. Really hasn't had less than 13.5 points. So 16 points, 22 points, 13.5, and 17.5, and at least 7 catches. So that is insane. And yeah, it's going to be a tough matchup for him against Jacksonville's linebackers, but I just believe in Zach Ertz so much that's why he makes my number 3.
Yeah, and so we've talked about both of our 2 and 3 so far, and now I'll go to my number 4 is Jared Cook this week. Jared Cook was lighting it up the first couple of weeks. He was the number 1 tight end for a few weeks in our fantasy league, and with Amari Cooper gone, I think he goes back to seeing that target share a lot. And it helps that the Colts are 25th in the league, in our league anyway, against opposing tight ends. So this is a game where Jared Cook could feast, and I have him above Rob Gronkowski this week.
Yeah, and I mean, after Derek Carr got hurt last week, he ended the game last week with 2 catches for 10 yards for 2 points. So that's not good at all. But his quarterback did go down. He hurt his shoulder a little bit, but he's fine. What the hell? Okay, never mind. So that was 2 weeks ago. So they're actually been on their bye. Back up. When they played Seattle, Derek Carr got hurt, but they were on a bye. Hopefully that team is a little healthier. But yeah, I like it. Jared Cook, he comes as my number 4 as well. So I like this matchup against Indianapolis. They really haven't been able to shut down opposing tight ends. So they're 25th in the league. So that's bottom of the barrel really as you get to it. So I like this matchup a lot for my number 4. So I'll move on to my number 5. I picked up Gronkowski. So I know he was out last week, but hey, if Gronk is back in, you have to play him. And right now Belichick says he has a shot to play. It helps that they're playing on Monday night and against the Bills. The Bills linebackers are pretty bad. I can't even name one of them right now.
They have that first round draft pick who's looked pretty good, but I can't think of his name right now.
Yep. I don't know. They had I know Alexander, which 2 years ago he lit it up, but ever since then he really hasn't done anything. But yeah, they're linebackers I can't even say, but yeah, I think that he's going to help the Patriots go up big. And when Tom Brady, that's his favorite target when he needs help. We talk about Josh Gordon being his most reliable target these last few weeks, but when Gronk's healthy, Tom Brady goes to him to make big plays.
Yeah, Gronk is my number 5 as well, and it's really just barring on the fact that he plays. He's questionable right now, so if he plays, he's my number 5 overall tight end for all the reasons you said. If he doesn't play, I think I like David Njoku here at the number 5 spot. Njoku has been a much bigger part of that offense lately since Baker Mayfield has taken over the last 3 weeks. 9 points on 6 receptions. The week after that, 14.5 points on 7 receptions, and then last week 13 points on 4 receptions with a touchdown in each of the last 2 weeks. So while I like Gronk more than David Njoku, if Gronk plays this week, it's looking likely that Gronk might not play. They might try and keep him as healthy as possible for playoff pushes. So I would go David Njoku over Gronk, or instead of Gronk, if Gronk doesn't play.
Yeah, he would come in as as my number 6. So yeah, I agree with you that David Njoku has been a lot better with Mayfield in there, and he got a pretty good touchdown last week against Tampa Bay. So Pittsburgh's defense is kind of middle of the pack. It's not shut down like it's used to be. They really haven't been able to rush the passer like they were last year. So it's going to give Mayfield a little bit more time to let plays develop. But yeah, I like this matchup for Njoku as well. That's a good sleeper for you, or number 5 for you. For my sleeper, and this might be another questionable sleeper because you know he's going to start, but I picked CJ Uzomah. So he had a decent game last week. Let's see. So he had 8 points because he had a touchdown. So he has stepped in for Tyler Eifert, and they're playing Tampa Bay. This is once again another Bengals player that we like against Tampa Bay's horrible defense. So Gerald McCoy has been ruled out again this week. So that's going to help Andy Dalton as well, and Joe Mixon. I forgot to mention that again with Joe Mixon, but yeah, I like CJ Uzomah. He's had pretty good catches. He's a big target. He's just a big human being, and he's pretty athletic, and he can catch the ball in the red zone. So, I mean, the ball's going to have to be spread around, so maybe he doesn't get a touchdown, but I think it's pretty solid for maybe 6 catches and 60 yards.
Yeah, I like that sleeper pick a lot. Yeah, my love for CJ Uzomah is well known on this podcast so far. I like him a lot as a sleeper here against Tampa Bay. My sleeper pick this week is Jack Doyle because he should be back from his injury, and as much as Eric Ebron has been a fantasy darling, Andrew Luck likes throwing the ball to Jack Doyle. He is one of his favorite targets outside of maybe T.Y. Hilton. So sorry, Ebron owners, but Jack Doyle's coming back this week, and I think he sees the bulk of the tight end targets and maybe a touchdown. So that's why I went with him in my sleeper pick here.
Yeah, before he got injured, so he got injured in week 2, but the first week he had 7 catches for 60 yards for 7.5 points. That's pretty decent, especially for a sleeper pick. But yeah, if it all depends, and he has a good matchup going against Oakland. We already talked about their defense isn't very good at all. But yeah, it all depends if they want to ease him in slowly or if it's just like, hey, take the training wheels off, you're good to go. So yeah, that's a good sleeper pick, and he could really produce this week. So to move on to defenses, for my number 1, I have the Bears. So they're going against the Jets, who has been 26. The quarterbacks have done 20, or the offenses has done 26 against the opposing defenses. So Sam Darnold, he was pretty solid to start the year off. It seems like the teams are starting to figure him out a little bit, and the Jets wide receivers are down. They really are. And then Bilal Powell he's having a neck surgery this week, who could end his career.
Yeah, from what I understand, he's done for the season.
Yep. Yeah, so at least the season, and maybe his career. Hopefully he heals up and makes the right choice for his life later down the road. But hey, the Jets, their offense is hurting, and I like this matchup for the Bears. So it's been ruled that Khalil Mack the last 2 weeks has been dealing with an ankle injury, and he is fully healthy now. So he has slowed down a little bit, hasn't really done anything. He didn't do anything against Miami. And New England, their offense is just so good that they weren't able to do anything against them. They had 1 pick and 2 fumble recoveries, but that's it. So they let up 38 points. I don't see them letting that many points up at all, and I see Khalil Mack getting back into form, at least a sack and hopefully a forced fumble. So that's why I have the Bears for number 1.
Yeah, Bears defense is my number 1 here as well. And Sam Darnold has looked good, but he's looked really bad against pressure. And the Bears are really, really good at bringing pressure, especially with a fully healthy Khalil Mack. I think this is a layup as far as defensive go. If you are the Bears owner, you're really happy. They're going to put up a lot of fantasy points this week. My number 2 on defenses this week is the Eagles against Jacksonville. Blake Bortles is starting. He does tend to play a little bit better after he's been benched and starts the next game, but the Eagles defense has really turned it on lately. They look not so good to start the season, but have been sort of returning to form. The Jacksonville Jaguars do have Carlos Hyde now, which scares me a little bit because Carlos Hyde is a really good running back, but they've just looked so bad on offense overall that I can't not pick the Eagles here.
Yeah, they're my number 3. So this game's actually being played in London as well, too. So who knows if that's going to mess up the Jaguars' defense as well. But yeah, something's not right when they bench their first round or their number 1 quarterback in the first half, and then Cody Kessler comes in and doesn't do any better. He scored a touchdown for him, which, hey, they got 7 points, but that's it. So he didn't do as well as they wanted to, so they decided to go back to Bortles. And he has the most turnovers since he came into the league. He has 60 turnovers as a quarterback.
Wow.
Which is it's insane.
That's nutty. They got to move on from him now, don't they?
You can't have the quarterback have the most turnovers on your team.
Yeah.
No, and that's not only interception. He fumbles the ball. He just makes dumb passes. And they really messed up this offseason when they decided to bet against him and sign him and say, hey, we'll pay you $18 million a year. No one else will, but we will.
Yep.
They could have got a lot better quarterbacks in this offseason. And they made it to the AFC Championship last year. And if they got a decent quarterback, a lot more decent than Bortles. I know Patrick Mahomes is showing up, and the Patriots are themselves this year, but they could have had a big shot to go back to at least the AFC Championship. But with Bortles, they're not going to get there.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So I'm guessing that our number 3 and number 2 are probably just swapped because at number 3, I have the Patriots against Buffalo.
Yep, and I hate you because I put in a waiver claim for the Patriots, and you got them.
Yes, so I was ahead of him in the waiver wire priority, but luckily you have my number 4 defense now, or you more than likely will with the Colts.
So.
But Patriots against Buffalo. Buffalo looks like they're probably starting Derek Anderson again. It doesn't matter if they start Derek Anderson or Nathan Peterman. There's going to be quite a few interceptions in this game, and the odds are good that the Patriots can take one of them back to the house. I think the Patriots defense has the most upside this week. They just haven't put up a lot of fantasy points in general so far this year. That's why they're number 3 for me. But in terms of upside, I think they have a good chance of scoring the most points of any defense this week.
Yeah, and so they are my number 2. So I really like them. I really wanted them. But so when Buffalo played the Colts, they let up 3 picks, they let up 2 fumbles, and they only scored 3 points. So I see at least the same against New England because Derek Anderson is not the answer there. It sucks that Josh Allen got hurt, but beside LaShawn McCoy, Kevin Benjamin just really hasn't done anything. Charles Clay, same thing. He's really fallen off the earth. And I see New England starting to pick it up. They usually pick it up around week 6, and hey, it's going to be week 8, so they're starting to churn and making their path, and yeah, that's why I like the Patriots. They're my number 2.
So is your number 3 then the Eagles?
Yep.
All right.
We have the same top 3.
Top 3, just number 2 and number 3 switch. So my number 4 is the Colts against Oakland. Yeah, Oakland is 28th in the league against opposing defenses. The Colts have a pretty solid defense, honestly. Darius Leonard has looked really good, but I just don't see a way that Oakland can win this game, honestly. The Colts have looked really good lately. I think Derek Carr probably throws an interception or 2, but mainly I just don't see Oakland scoring more than 1 touchdown. I wouldn't be surprised if they score 10 points in this game total and have a couple interceptions, maybe a fumble or 2. I don't think the Colts have a lot of upside because there's not a lot of huge playmakers on their defense, but it's a solid week for the Colts defense in this matchup.
Yeah, so I have the Colts as number 4 as well against Oakland. It's kind of sad to see what's happening to Oakland. I mean, they traded away Khalil Mack, which I get it. They couldn't or didn't want to pay him for some reason. And then Cooper, he's really fallen off the earth the past 2 years. So in the past 2 years, he is the 41st in catches and the 47th in receptions. He's just not doing it. And hey, when someone says, hey, we'll give you a first-round pick for someone that probably is producing like a 4th or 5th round pick, you got to jump on it. So it sucks for their offense to lose him, but it's good for the Colts defense. Like you said, Leonard's been decent, and they're starting to get healthy again. So yeah, I like the Colts defense. They're my number 4 as well. For number 5, I bet we have someone different. I actually have the Texans.
Oh, yeah, we definitely have someone different.
Yeah, so the Texans, Albert Wilson, they're playing Miami. So Albert Wilson is out. He's on the IR. Kenny Stills is out. And they're going to have to play Devontae Parker if they want to. But, I mean, I'm a Dolphins fan. It just sucks to say this, but I don't see Brock Osweiler doing what he's been doing these past 2 weeks. He just can't stay doing this. So right now they have Jakeem Grant and Danny Amendola and Devontae Parker, who he's been a healthy scratch the last 3 weeks. So they don't have receivers, really, at all. Kenyon Drake could explode for an explosive play, but Tyrann Mathieu has been pretty decent this year there. And then just with Davion Clowney, J.J. Watt, and the rest of their defensive line, they've been just feasting the last 3 weeks. So I like them this week against Miami. It sucks to say, but sorry, Dolphins.
That's a really solid pick, and they'd probably be my number 6 overall defense. At number 5, I have the Redskins against the Giants because you know who I actually trust less than Brock Osweiler? Eli fucking Manning. Like, he is just so bad this year. Odell Beckham had a nice game last week, and Eli sort of started to connect with him again. But Josh Norman is going to be all over Odell, and Saquon Barkley is going to get swallowed up by that great Redskins defensive line. I see the Giants scoring 6 points total in this game, and one of those field goals will be in garbage time. I think this game ends something like 24-6, something like that. Maybe there's no explosive plays for the Redskins defense, just like the Colts defense, because I don't see any huge playmakers there either, honestly, outside of Josh Norman. But Josh Norman hasn't been the Panthers version of Josh Norman for the Redskins. He's been solid, though. Yeah. But I just don't see a way that the Giants' offense can keep up with the Redskins' defense, and that's why they're my number 5 pick.
Huh. Well, surprise, surprise, they're my sleeper team. Because when you think of defense, you don't think of the Redskins.
That's true. That's very true.
And they've been 14th, so they're middle in the pack as far as our league for defenses. So maybe I'm not picking sleepers this week. But
no, I think this is a solid strategy for you, and I probably should have had the Texans at 5 and then the Redskins as my sleeper, because you're right, the Redskins defense is a sleeper pick. I don't even know if they're owned in our league, honestly, or in many leagues at all. They are, actually they are owned by the Crew. So
they're only owned 27%.
Yeah, in 27% of leagues, and they're only started right now in 12.7% of leagues. I think that number's going to skyrocket here in the next couple of days, but this is a good sleeper pick for you.
Yeah, and like just the same reasoning against the Giants. I see Eli Manning. He throws his ducks. He really can't throw past 40 yards this year, and I mean he was done last year, and he's definitely done this year. We've already talked about how their best 2 players are Barkley and Odell, which they got some good garbage time points last week, but I don't see that happening again against the Redskins. I think they're just going to feast on them, and whenever someone gets within a foot or 2 feet from Eli Manning, he just crumbles, and I see their defensive line doing that to him, so that's why they're my sleeper pick.
Yeah, and homework glasses on for this one. My sleeper pick is the San Francisco 49ers defense against the Cardinals. The Niners defense is bad. Every single week they're bad. They're probably not a smart play. But the Cardinals have the 32nd ranked fantasy offense in the league. Now, I've talked about how they fired Mike McCoy, and that's probably a very good thing. So this could be a horrible pick for me as far as fantasy defenses go. But Richard Sherman should be back, so the Niners defense should look a lot better than it was last week against the Rams. And the Cardinals are much, much worse than the Rams. So I think this game is going to be a boring game. We see something like a score of 13-9 or something like that, maybe. It's going to be slow and just dreadful to watch, and I'm going to watch every second of it, unfortunately. But this could be a game where the Niners defense just stays right around that 10-point threshold that defenses start with in ESPN, and that is, like, I'd be happy with that as my fantasy defense. I would love to have 10 points from my defense every single week, so that's why I have them at my sleeper pick.
Yeah, I mean, it's my sleeper quarterback against your sleeper defense, really. And we talked about Josh Rosen, how they've sucked this year on offense, and they can continue sucking.
Yeah,
they really can.
most definitely.
So the 49ers, I like this, especially like you said with Richard Sherman coming back. They got to do something on defense, and I'm pretty confident that Kyle Shanahan can plan against this bland offense for Arizona. So yeah, that's a good sleeper pick for you. And lastly, but not least, I think we have the same for our. We're only doing one for kickers like we did last week, and you got to choose Greg the Leg.
Yeah, it's got to be Greg Zuerlein here. He has a great matchup. There's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. There's going to be quite a few field goals kicked, I think. This is just a really good spot for him. So if you're only picking one kicker every single week, most weeks it's going to be Greg the Leg. If it continues that way, maybe we'll just get rid of this part of the segment and not even pick kickers. But yeah, it's definitely Greg this week.
Yeah, I mean, so since he came back from his injury, so he played one game, got 15 points, was injured the rest of the weeks, came back and had 13 points. He was 3 for 3 for air field goals and then a 4 for 4 for extra points made. And just with that Rams offense, they're going to get so many points going against Green Bay, which I can see them stopping it in the end zone maybe once or twice. So that's going to be his field goals right there. So yeah, he's number one for me as well.
So my team lost to Stairway to Evans 98-99. Really, really tough loss for me here. The giant mistake was starting Frank Gore over James White. I didn't predict Sony Michel getting injured, but even if he didn't get injured, James White still had a receiving touchdown, so I don't think that would have changed. Dumb move on my part, but props to Stairway to Evans, who had a really, really great week. The Redskins defense put up 16.5 points. He got 19 from Jameis Winston, 15.5 from Michael Thomas, so solid week from him and good win.
Yeah, I mean, he only won by a point, too. So you almost came back. Came out to the last game of the week. The Giants playing Atlanta, and Julio Jones got 12.5.
That last catch from Julio Jones killed me. I was so mad. Oh, man.
But yeah, it really hurt you. Frank Gore got 2.5, and then Kyle Rudolph only got 1.5. So yeah, you can't win. And I mean, you almost did, but usually you can't win with 2 of your players getting only 2.5 points. So yeah, good win by Stairway to Evans. So to move on to my game, sorry I don't have it up. So I won 105-94. I had a decent week. It was close at the beginning, but hey, Todd Gurley got me 28 points like he always does. Tyreek Hill got 15.5. He had that touchdown at the end. Philip Lindsay did pretty solid for me, 15.5. He was my top 5. I think he was my number 5 running back last week. And hey, my bench did pretty good too. So I started Austin Hooper over Burton, who Austin Hooper got 5.5. Burton got 22.5. So that's why I'm going to be starting him this week. But yeah, then Joe Flacco did pretty solid. So I got a pretty good quarterback set up, Matthew Stafford and Joe Flacco. But yeah, thanks. I ain't no Fournette son, but thanks for the win. I really needed it. Now I'm 3-4. So hopefully I can keep the streak going.
Yeah, Fournette's son didn't really have anyone on his bench he could have replaced to do any better. It sucks that Ricky Seals-Jones got hurt in that matchup and sat out the rest of the game, so only got 2 points from him and only 4 points from Kenny Galladay, who we told him to start over other wide receivers. Kenny Stills only got 6.5 points, though, so it's not like there was a better decision on his bench, really. He couldn't have won this matchup with any combination of players, so that is really bad luck for him. But it goes to show that when you have the least points scored against you in the league, you are due to lose some games. Moving on to Dick Dangla versus the Jimmy G Spot Rockas. I believe we both picked Dangla in this matchup.
Yep.
Or at least I did.
We both did.
All right. So Jimmy G Spot Rockers took this one home. Really, really nice game from Kerryon Johnson, who we highlighted last week as a great start. Got 18 fantasy points. Zach Ertz 17.5, as he does every week. Odell got 24 in finally a good game. Drew Brees was 16, so solid week overall from the Jimmy G Spot Rockers.
Yeah, and I mean, Dick Dangla, you didn't have a bad game, so you only had 6 points on your bench. You scored 101 points. It just didn't help that Jimmy G Spot Rockers scored 123. We both thought you would win. Alvin Kamara got 14 points. You do expect some more from him, but his production has been down since Ingram's came back, and then Willie Snead only got you 4.5 points. You need more help than that. And Greneau, your kicker got you 1 point. So you might need to look for a new kicker this week. But yeah, that was just a hard loss and a good win by Jimmy G Spot Rockers. I should have kept my belief in you, but I didn't.
I did convince you to pick the Dick Dangler in that matchup. That is my one highlight this week is I only got one game correct, and you are beating me in the overall standings right now. Moving on to Sack Lives Matter versus Wide Right. This was just a horrible matchup all around. So Sack Lives Matter won this one 78.5 to 72.5. I picked Wide Right in this matchup. Of course I did. Matt Ryan got him 19. Tevin Coleman got him 15. Solid games from them. His big mistakes were Wendell Smallwood, who I believe we told him not to start, only got 4 points. Jordan Reed, only 5. LaShawn McCoy got 0 fantasy points. They need to trade him. They need to get some sort of value out of him in a year where Buffalo just has no chance this year. So why not trade him and get something in return for him? Cam Newton on his bench had 24 fantasy points, but outside of that, he didn't have anyone else to start.
Yeah, it's funny because we shit on Chris Ivory, LaShawn McCoy's replacement, but hey, McCoy didn't hurt, and we said that unless he gets hurt, Chris Ivory's not going to do anything, and he did. It really hurt you with 0 points. But yeah, Sack Life Matters. He did win. It was a low-scoring game. His best player was Saquon Barkley with 21.5, and his next best player was 14.5 from AJ Green. So his team didn't do good as a whole, but hey, you're lucky you played Wide Right this week. So yeah, good win by you. So let's see. We only got
take those lucky wins where you can get them. Next game up is the Lucky Neckbeards versus Tobias Anorapis. I pick against the Neckbeards every single week, and it's always a mistake. They're 6-1. They're killing it. They won 126.5 to 95 this week. Tobias Anorapis, Ezekiel Elliott 4 points, Mark Ingram 5 points, Golden Tate 8 points, Will Fuller 9 points. Just not a lot of production from the guys you need to produce every single week. Sort of, I think this is a lot of bad luck because those are very good players. You expect to do a lot better. So I wish this matchup would have gone the other way because it was one of my bolder picks of the week last week, but unfortunately couldn't pull through.
So Lucky Neckbeards won by 36 points, and Melvin Ingram got 0 points on his team.
Melvin Gordon.
So yeah, Melvin Gordon was a game time decision, so it's not like you needed him this week, but hey, he definitely could have helped. You didn't have any running backs that played last week, though, on your bench, so it's not like you could trade him out with anyone. But yeah, just solid performance. Once again, you got to lose sometime, guy. Come on. You got to give us other people a chance. But Adam Thielen and Kirk Cousins, that's been a solid matchup, or a solid combination for you this year. And you got Alshon Jeffrey, which I've been talking him up. He's starting to turn it around with Carson Wentz being in there again. And Alshon Jeffrey is healthy. Eric Ebron got you 4.5, and Ravens got you 4.5. But hey, you didn't really need them this week, and you got a big game from Sterling Shepard. He had 100 yards in the first half, and he hasn't done that at all this year. And I don't think, but maybe twice last year. So hey, you had a good showing with him. So you're on top. Hopefully you're not there for long, but good win again, Lucky Neckbeards. You're the best one in our league so far.
You left out his best player so far last week, though, which was Marlon Mack,
sorry.
who I said was my favorite play on his team last week, and it proved true. You said he might need to replace him. I'm shocked.
I did. I didn't believe, but he proved me wrong.
I do love that he put up 30 fantasy points, though. That is just great. Moving on to Team Cortez versus Dallin and the Chipmunks. Team Cortez, we both picked against you this week. And I remember messaging you and saying, hey, you're not going to want to listen to the podcast this week. Well, it's sweet revenge for you here because you won 112 to 105.5. Dalvin and the Chipmunks, Patrick Mahomes got you 32 fantasy points, as he seems to do every single week, so great start there. But 9 from Royce Freeman, 4 from Duke Johnson. You need to get some running backs on your squad, man. You've made quite a few trades this year, but none of them have produced a good running back for you. On your bench, let's see.
No one.
You're sitting on Dalvin Cook, who's out till week 11. Dion Lewis did have a really, really nice game with 18 fantasy points, but he's so hot and cold, it's really hard to predict. With Bilal Powell being out for the year, Isaiah Crowell only got you 4.5 last week, but he's looking like a solid start now. Yeah. He's a starting running back, so he's someone I would probably slot in there, but you still need help at running back, I think.
Yeah, and it doesn't help when Allen Robinson gets you half a point because he got hurt against New England. But yeah, Team Cortez, good job, guy. I've been shitting on you all year, but hey, it came out. I remember Dan, though, he said for him to win, the Rams are going to have 30 points. They had 28.5. So, hey, Dan thought up something playing against San Francisco. Hey, they came out when they needed to, but good win by you. You're still beating me, us both, for record, so you're doing something right. But, hey, that luck's got to end sometime.
Yeah, him and Ain't No Fournette's son have the lowest points scored against them in the league so far, so I do expect some more losses from them in the future, but great win by Team Cortez this week.
Yeah. Hopefully you can win another one next week, and maybe I'll bet on you. So to go over our picks from last week, so I was 4-2, so I lost the Dick Dale game and then the Chipmunks game. And then you were 1-5.
1-5. The only team I picked correctly was yours, and that one was sort of a layup. So that brings you ahead in the standings. You are now 20-16, and I am 18-18. So I'm breaking 500 at least, which is okay. So in our picks in the next episode, I'm going to crush it. I'm picking all 6 games correctly, and there's nothing you can do about it.
All right, well, I think that rounds us up for this episode. So I'm Matt Bowen.
And I'm Daniel Powell, and just remember, guys, 2 assholes are better than 1.